I was in a cheap hotel in Pittsburgh, the kind where the carpet sticks to your shoes and the walls seem to breathe. It was late, around 10 p.m., the kind of hour where you're either asleep or too tired to care, but your mind keeps moving. I was just about to turn off the TV when my phone buzzed. It was Kelly. We were video chatting, like we usually did when I was out of town. "Hey babe, how's it going?" She told me about her day, what she had for lunch, the weather back home. It was routine, but there was something in the way she said girlfriends when she mentioned dinner. I didn't ask who, just listened. Then I heard it, a man's laugh. It was faint but unmistakable. I paused. "What was that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She brushed it off quick. "Oh, just the TV. You know how loud it gets." But I knew her well enough to hear the deflection, the change in her voice. Still, I didn't press. That's not how I operate. I played it cool. "Sounds like fun," I said. "Tell them I said hi." Before she could hang up, I saw it. For half a second, the laptop camera shifted, and I caught a glimpse of the bed behind her. There, beside it, were boots. Big, muddy boots. Definitely not mine. I wear sneakers. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I told her I loved her, and she hung up. The call ended, but my mind didn't. I stared at the screen for a moment, then I picked up my phone again. I changed my return flight from Thursday evening to 6:10 a.m. Wednesday. I'd be home by 10 a.m. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for truth. The plane landed just after 9 a.m. I pulled out my phone before the seatbelt sign had even gone off. I knew what I had to do. Kelly's dad, Dennis, had always liked me. Hell, he thought I was the best thing to happen to Kelly. I didn't tell him the whole story. Not yet. But I needed help. I shot him a quick text. "Hey, thinking of surprising Kelly. Mind if I come by?" Dennis didn't take long to reply. "Sounds good, son." I couldn't help but let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I'd been playing this game on my own for too long. Now, I had backup. I grabbed a cab from the airport, but instead of heading home, I told the driver to take me to Dennis and Linda's place. They'd lived in the same house since 1982, a simple brick ranch on a quiet street. The kind of house that didn't change. The kind of house that felt like safety. There was a flag in the yard, and the front porch had a swing that creaked when the wind blew. It was all steady, solid. Even the smell inside, scrambled eggs and hash browns, had a way of grounding me. Linda greeted me at the door with a smile and a hug, like she hadn't seen me in years instead of just a few weeks. She went straight to the kitchen, and I joined her at the table. She made me feel like nothing was wrong, but I could see it in her eyes. She noticed my tension. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, stirring eggs in the pan, like she didn't already know the answer. I shrugged, trying to seem casual, but I wasn't fooling anyone. "Kelly's just been acting different lately. I don't know. She's distant, not herself." Dennis, who'd been sitting on the couch with a mug of coffee, fell quiet at that. He put his cup down slowly, like the words had just landed heavy in his chest. "She's been distant at Sunday dinners too," he said, almost like he was talking to himself. "But we chalked it up to stress, you know, work, the house, whatever." I nodded, but I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I'd seen enough. Finally, after a long pause, I spoke up. "I'm thinking of going to the house tomorrow. Surprise her. Maybe she'll open up, you know." Dennis didn't hesitate. "I'll go with you," he said, without even looking at Linda. Linda, who had been quietly setting the table, didn't say much, but I caught the worry in her eyes. She didn't need to speak for me to know she was thinking the same thing I was. Kelly wasn't acting normal, and whatever was going on, it wasn't good. I swallowed hard. "You'd come with me? You sure?" Dennis gave a short nod. "You bet. I'll follow your lead, son." I felt a little lighter, but not much. This wasn't going to be easy. We laid out the plan over scrambled eggs and hash browns. Tomorrow at 1. I'd use my key. We'd see what was really going on. Linda cleared her throat as she set down the plates. "You sure about this, son?" Her voice was gentle, but there was a sharpness to it now. She wasn't just being a mom. She was looking out for me. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the question hang in the air. Finally, I looked her in the eye. "I don't know, but I've got to know. I can't keep wondering, Linda." She nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. She understood. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I kept going over the plan in my head, trying to prepare myself for whatever I might find. But no matter how many times I ran the scenario, it didn't make it any easier. Tomorrow would be the day, and the truth, whatever it was coming to light. We pulled up to the house a little after 1. Kelly's car was in the driveway, parked right where it always was. I got out first and didn't wait for Dennis or Linda. I didn't want to feel like I needed to explain anything to them. They were just here for the ride. I motioned for them to follow my lead. The front door was unlocked like it always was. It was like I hadn't been gone at all. But when I stepped inside, something hit me. The air felt different, like a weight had settled in the corners. The living room was quiet, empty, but there was a beer can on the coffee table, some IPA I didn't drink, some brand I'd never seen. I hadn't even thought about it, but now I couldn't get it out of my head. I motioned to Dennis and Linda to be quiet, then started toward the stairs. That's when I heard it. Music. But then there was a man's laugh. A loud laugh. I froze. My heart kicked into overdrive. Kelly's voice followed. It was light, casual, like everything was normal. But it wasn't. I looked at Dennis and Linda. They were right behind me, but they didn't move a muscle. I didn't have to say anything. We were all thinking the same thing. I took the stairs slowly, deliberately, trying to keep the anger, the hurt, the sick feeling out of my voice. The top of the stairs was quiet, except for that damn music, and then the unmistakable sound of someone laughing again. I looked at Dennis, then at Linda. My eyes told them to stay behind me. We got to the door of our bedroom. It was cracked open. My stomach twisted, but my hands were steady. I pushed the door open slowly, and there she was. Kelly was in bed with some guy, a younger guy. His chest was covered in tattoos, his hair slicked back like he thought he was some kind of badass. He was trying to cover up with the sheets, but I saw enough. I saw everything. She screamed when she saw me. The guy shot up, fumbling for the blankets, his face twisted in panic. But it was Kelly's face that I couldn't stop looking at. Her eyes were wide, but she didn't speak. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Linda gasped behind me. I didn't turn to look. Dennis, though, he didn't move. His mouth was tight, jaw clenched like he was holding on to something, and his eyes were fixed on Kelly. He didn't seem surprised. He was just angry. I stood there, frozen for a second, but it wasn't disbelief I felt. I wasn't shocked. I'd known. I was just watching. Kelly started to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. "Get your stuff," I said, and my voice came out steady, colder than I thought it would. "You've got 30 minutes. The words seemed to hang in the air. She blinked like she didn't understand at first. Then her face crumpled. I don't, she started, but I cut her off again. "No excuses," I said. 30 minutes. Don't make me say it again." Dennis shifted behind me, but he didn't say anything. His eyes didn't leave Kelly. Linda, though, Linda's eyes were on me now. There was something there, a flicker of recognition, a recognition that I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't the guy who tried to fix everything with a conversation, with a word. There was no fixing this. Kelly just stood there, tears streaming down her face. She looked between me and the guy in the bed, like she was trying to figure out what came next, but I already knew. I wasn't waiting around for an apology, and I wasn't going to beg for explanations. I stepped back, keeping my eyes on her. 30 minutes, Kelly. I didn't look at the guy. Didn't need to. I'd already seen enough. I turned away, and Linda followed me downstairs. Dennis stayed behind, probably saying something to Kelly, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except that damn clock ticking in my head. 30 minutes. The guy, Brandon she called him, was scrambling to get dressed. I didn't look at him, not once. I didn't need to. Kelly followed me into the hall, her face already twisted up, tears running down her cheeks. "Please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please just talk to me. This wasn't what you think." I didn't stop. I just reached out and shut the bedroom door behind us, shutting her in with him, and walked downstairs with her parents following close behind. Dennis, who had been as still as stone the entire time, finally broke the silence. He looked at me, his eyes hard. "You want me to knock that punk's teeth in?" I shook my head without looking at him. "Not worth it." We sat in the living room, the air thick and heavy, the quiet unbearable. I could hear Kelly's sobs upstairs, but I didn't feel anything anymore. Not anger, not rage, just nothing. I just kept staring at the door. 20 minutes passed, and then I heard her feet on the stairs. She came down, eyes swollen, face red, and her whole body shaking like she was still trying to hold it together. But there was no pretending anymore. She looked at me, her voice soft, apologetic. "It was a mistake, okay? Just once. We were fighting. I felt lonely. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want the excuses. So I cut her off. How long? She hesitated, looking away for a second like she was trying to find the right words. But the truth was already on her face. 4 months, she said, almost too quietly to hear. 4 months. I didn't even flinch. I'd already known. Linda was sitting beside me, her hands folded in her lap, but her face was streaked with tears. She looked at Kelly like she didn't even recognize her anymore. Dennis was still staring straight ahead, his jaw tight. He didn't say a word. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. I handed it to Kelly, watching her eyes dart down to the papers inside. It was a stack of printouts, texts I'd found when I had checked our phone bill weeks ago, messages between her and Brandon, some from the night before, some from months ago. I knew back in September, I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. I just didn't want to believe it, but I'm done now. She took the envelope from me, but didn't look at the papers. She looked at me instead, her face crumpling again. "I'm sorry, please," she said, reaching for me, her arms outstretched like she thought she could fix it with one more touch, one more apology. I stepped back, out of her reach, and I could see the shock in her eyes, the disbelief that I wasn't begging for her forgiveness. "You lost that right," I said, and I meant it. She started crying harder, the tears falling faster now, like there was no stopping them. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, her voice desperate. Dennis didn't hesitate. He stood up, his voice low but firm. "You've got a key to our place, but don't expect it to be easy." She nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I didn't wait for anything else. Didn't wait for another apology or another word. I stood up, feeling like I was made of stone. I didn't look at Kelly again. I didn't look at Dennis or Linda. I didn't even look at the house. I walked straight out the door. That night, I slept in the guest room. The bed smelled like lemon cleaner and something else I couldn't place. Maybe just solitude. It was fine. I didn't need anything else. I needed quiet. The first light of morning found me already awake. I didn't sleep much, not really, but the stillness of the house was its own kind of peace. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the wind outside pressing against the windows, but mostly I heard my own thoughts. I picked up my phone. The first call was to a locksmith. "I need the locks changed today," I told the guy on the other end, and he said he'd be over in an hour. Next, I called Tom, my lawyer buddy. He picked up on the second ring. "What's up?" "Hey, I want a file. Can you start the paperwork?" He didn't ask why or what happened. He just said, "Got it. I'll get it started." I hung up with him and moved on to the next thing. I picked up the phone again and called the bank. I canceled our joint checking account, and then I called the gym. They tried to convince me to freeze the membership, but I told them to cancel it. Then I turned to the house. I started packing her things, everything that was hers. I didn't break anything. I didn't slam doors. I didn't yell. I just bagged it up and set it on the porch. Some of it was easy. Clothes, shoes, that dumb yoga mat. But there were things that stung. I found a photo on the mantle from our trip to Banff, me holding her on a rock by the lake. We were smiling, both of us, but it felt like I was looking at a lifetime ago. I picked it up, stared at it for a second, and then dropped it in the trash. The house felt emptier by the minute, the space getting bigger as I moved through it, as if the walls were stretching out, pulling away. That evening, as the sun was setting, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dennis. Just 3 words. "Proud of you." I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen. It felt strange, good in some ways. I'd never wanted their approval more, but I'd never needed it less. I texted back, "Appreciate you both." I didn't hear from Kelly, didn't expect to. The house was mine now, in every sense, and I was done. The divorce paperwork moved faster than I expected. When Tom called me with the news, I thought he was joking at first. "She signed the prenup," he told me, sounding like he couldn't believe it himself. "She didn't fight it. Apparently, when we'd first gotten married, I'd been doing well. Good job, stable income, the whole deal. Kelly hadn't been making much then, so she'd signed off on the prenup without a second thought. At the time, I'd thought it was smart, just business. Turns out it worked out in my favor. Her lawyer tried to argue, but the proof of the affair shut that down quick. There was no getting around it. It was like they'd known all along how this was going to end. In the end, I kept the house, my truck, and my pension. Kelly got her car, a chunk of savings, and the lease on her studio. No kids, no strings, just signatures. A week after the final court date, I found myself sitting in my kitchen, eating spaghetti straight from the pot. I didn't bother with a plate. It felt like the first time in months I could finally breathe. The weight on my chest, the knot in my stomach, it was all gone. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I was at peace. I picked up my phone and texted Dennis and Linda. It's done. A few seconds later, Dennis replied, "Come by for ribs on Sunday." I sat there for a second, staring at the screen. I hadn't even thought about it, but I realized I needed it. I needed something that felt like normal, something that didn't have the mess of everything else attached to it. So I texted back, "I'll be there." Sunday came, and I showed up at Dennis and Linda's house like it was any other Sunday. Nothing was different, at least not in the way that mattered. Dennis was out back, tending to the grill, and Linda was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she pulled out a pie from the oven. The smell of ribs and peach cobbler hit me the second I walked in, and it felt like nothing had changed. Dennis clapped me on the back when I walked outside. "Good to see you, son." I just nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Good to be here." We ate, and it was almost like the past few months hadn't happened. Linda made my favorite peach cobbler, just like always. And we sat around the table talking about nothing important, the way you do when everything feels normal again. For a while, it felt like I could almost believe things were the way they used to be. I wasn't fooling myself, but it was nice to pretend, just for a little while. 3 months passed. I took a solo trip upstate one weekend, a quick getaway. It wasn't much, just a few days, but I needed it. I went hiking, pushed myself harder than I thought I could, the air thin and sharp in my lungs. The hike wasn't difficult, but it was enough to remind me that I still had something to fight for, something left in me. I sat by a lake for hours one afternoon, just listening to the water lap against the shore, watching the sky change. I hadn't been able to do that in years, just sit and think without 1,000 things demanding my attention. I read a whole book in 2 days, cover to cover. A book, not a magazine, not a news article, an actual novel. It felt like reclaiming a part of me I'd forgotten. Back home, I started working out again. The gym wasn't the same without Kelly, but I didn't need her to go anymore. It was for me, not for anything or anyone else. I fixed up the garage, cleaned out the junk that had piled up over the years. I sold her yoga gear on Craigslist. It felt good to finally let go of those things, one by one. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I went to a rescue shelter. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just getting out. But then I saw him, a black lab mix with a patch of white on his chest, sitting in the corner of the cage, staring at me. He had this way about him, like he already knew me, already knew what I needed. We hit it off immediately. I don't know if it was the way he looked at me or the way he didn't need any convincing, but I took him home that day. I named him Duke. Every morning, Duke and I walked along the river trail. At first, it was just us, the sound of his paws hitting the dirt and the water running beside us. But after a while, people started recognizing us. A neighbor waved from his porch one day and asked if Duke and I wanted to join a poker game. It wasn't much, just a few bucks on the table and some beers, but it felt good to have something simple and real again. One night, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just my name written in neat, careful letters on the front. Inside, there was just one line: "You'll always be family." It was from Linda. I sat with the card in my hand for a while, letting the words sink in. Then I called her. "Hey," I said when she picked up. "Hi, son," she said softly, like she was giving me space to talk, but she didn't need to. "You and Dennis mean the world to me," I said, and I meant it. There was a long pause before she spoke again. "You were the best thing to happen to Kelly," she said. She just didn't know it. I didn't respond. I just let her say it. She needed to. Finally, I hung up, but I didn't feel heavy. I felt free. The weight I had been carrying had finally lifted piece by piece, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was headed in the right direction. A year later, I found myself at Dennis and Linda's backyard, flipping burgers on the grill at their 40th anniversary BBQ. Their grandkids were running around, laughing and yelling, and for a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. The noise, the food, the way Linda kept walking over to hand me a beer, it was all the same. But I was different now. I'd earned that too. She came over with a cold bottle in her hand and smiled at me. "Glad you came," she said. I grinned, wiping my hands on a rag. Wouldn't miss it. After the food was gone and the sun was starting to dip low, we all helped clean up. That's when Linda came over with an envelope. She handed it to me, like it wasn't anything special, but I knew it was. Inside was a letter, handwritten in Dennis's steady, familiar handwriting. I read it slowly, letting the words settle in. We updated our will. The house goes to the kids, but our fishing cabin, that's yours, son. You've earned it. I stared at the words for a long time, feeling something in my chest. A mix of heaviness and lightness, like I was being anchored and set free at the same time. I folded the letter back up, tucked it in my pocket, and nodded at Linda. That weekend, I drove out to the cabin. It wasn't far, just a couple hours upstate, but it felt like a lifetime away. I brought Duke with me. He was in the back seat, his head hanging out the window, ears flapping in the wind. He didn't need to ask what we were doing. He just knew. When I got there, I unpacked a cooler, grabbed a chair, and took a seat by the lake. The water was still, barely a ripple, reflecting the trees and the sky like glass. I cracked open a beer, feeling the coolness slide down my throat. Duke flopped beside me, settling into the grass with a deep sigh. I scratched the back of his ears, watching the sun sink lower, casting long shadows over the water. It was quiet, but not the kind of silence that weighs on you. This was different. It was peaceful, like everything was in its place and nothing needed fixing. Not everything got fixed, not everything needed to. I realized then that sometimes the best revenge is living a life they don't get to touch anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that life was mine again.